Right, morning folks. Hope you enjoyed some good kai last night and the hangover's not too bad this morning. So we're going to kick things off with a project that most of us will all be familiar with, a long and wilding road. And it certainly has been, but Sherman Smith will be talking about it this morning. So let's jump on board the ride with him and take it away, Sherman.
Good morning. Yes, the long and wilding road to a better future. So you heard a bit in some of the introductory talks from Craig and others about some of the wilding control work that's been going on in the central North Island. I'm going to try and talk a little bit less about the control side of things and more about some of the other things going on across the program, but I'll probably dip into control as well because I love it so much. I guess the program itself is a big national partnership, a real big collaboration. So when I talk about things that the program are doing or we're doing, it's also encapsulating a whole lot of work of others. I'll try and, so across central and local government, mana whenua, contractors, landowners, industry, researchers. I'm sure to have missed somebody out, don't be offended. So it's kind of the royal we. So having said I'm not going to talk about control, my first slide's all about dead trees. So the first couple of pictures there, the top right-hand two, 2014 and 2021. This is in the Molesworth Management Unit, well, all of them are in the Molesworth Management Unit. Our management unit is kind of the area that we talk about when we're focusing our control efforts. And so the Molesworth Management Unit is a bit bigger than Molesworth Station, which is New Zealand's biggest farm, and encapsulates some of the surrounding pastoral leases as well. These first two photos, 7 years apart, just show, I guess, what our future looks like if we don't control wildings. So as you can see, they're going from scattered wildings in the river flats just in behind Hamner to pretty dense wilding forest very quickly. And that is really the future that we have if we don't do something about wildings. We can expect that about 25% of New Zealand will be invaded over the next 20 to 25 years. 40% in the longer term, with Douglas fir being a bit more shade tolerant and invading into some of the forests. And as a weed, it's pretty transformational, as you can see there, and it has billions of dollars of impacts if we don't do something about it. And that's across primary production, obviously not much grazing under there, increased fire hazard, water yields, tourism, landscape and recreation, all sorts of sort of impacts from those. So back in 2014, there was a national strategy developed to try and do something about all of this. And I thought it was kind of timely to have a look back, I guess, and see how we've got on in terms of implementing the strategy. So the strategy originally, it set out kind of 5 high-level goals. The first 4 are really about wilding control, about being timely and cost-effective with our control, having the community aware and helping with the journey, doing the control and preventing establishment of new problems, the collaboration aspect of things, and I guess land occupiers doing their bit to help avoid future costs and help establish new problems, or not establish new problems. And the fifth one is really, I guess, just acknowledging that actually conifers are a big part of our economy, 5th biggest export earner, and there was a need to make sure that we can have conifers where they make sense to be had. So supporting that, there was about 20 actions set out in the strategy, and looking back, we've actually done pretty well. We've pretty much achieved on most of them, or at least partially achieved, and there's a couple there that are sort of still work in progress, I guess, mainly around in accord with industry and about refining our future modelling of spread. So there's some work ongoing there. And so I had a bit of a top of head thought about, okay, so what are some of the things that we can kind of be proud of, and what are some of the things we've achieved under the program to date? So I guess the first thing is that actually, when we wrote that first strategy, there was no program. The program is a product of that vision that was set out in that strategy, established in 2016, and it's made some real visible progress towards implementing the goals of the strategy. We have a much better understanding now nationally of what the extent of our infestation is, a couple of million hectares of wild and conifer infestation that we have mapped out. We've taken a prioritised approach, collaboratively kind of agreed across the country of where we start to do our work. Can't do it all at once. We've proven that we can control these things at a landscape scale. So where you allocate the resources and you target your efforts, you can achieve an outcome. And that's sort of a major accomplishment, I guess, because I guess there was questions when we first started that journey. We've had some significant investment, sort of $180 million has been spent on this since 2016, if you include all the partner funding, and it's made a real difference. And I guess we're getting, in some areas we're now getting to the end of the journey, if you like, and we're starting to transition some areas back to local management, which is so, hopefully it's not something that the program has to be involved in forever. If we can get it to a point that it's manageable, we can hand it back to the landowners to look after into the long term, and that's starting to happen. We've had our first pilot run through that. We've got much better regulatory alignment. I'll talk a little bit about that later. The awareness of the issue is much higher than when we started. People used to wonder what wild and conifers were when I was talking about them, and now most people have a bit of an idea. We've got the control tools. We've refined our control tools, and we're continuing to do that. And there's been a huge collective effort, and we wouldn't have got as far as we've got without all the efforts of everybody involved. I guess digging into a couple of specific pieces, so control tools. So there's been a lot of work going into to our good practice and research that supports that. So we've put out a whole lot of operational research guides. And I guess that the long and short of it is that we have the tools to control these things effectively. They're actually not, in the grand scheme of things, not too hard to control. But there's always more you can do, and so we're actually just developing a research strategy at the moment to kind of give us a collective view of where our research priorities are going forward, so we can collaboratively work on that. I talked a little bit about regulatory alignment. So I've worked on a number of pest issues over my time, and I have to say wild and conifers is the most complex in terms of regulation and policy, because not only have you got all the regulation around your control tools and your Biosecurity Act type things, but you've also got all these other things going on around afforestation incentives and carbon policy, and it's just, there's all these unintended consequences of other pieces of legislation. So over the years, the team have worked really hard to try and align all these pieces, and I think we've actually done pretty well. It's always an ongoing journey. There's current things around Crown afforestation and Biosecurity Act review ongoing, but we're a lot better than when we started. And actually, some of the first work that we did, even before the strategy was implemented, was around aligning ETS policy and some of the unintended consequences of that. And another area that we've focused really heavily on in the wildings program is health and safety. So pretty much if you designed a program with as many risks as you could think about, the wildings program is it. Everything that foresters do, we do that. Then we throw in lots of helicopters and chainsaws and steep slopes where nobody in their right mind would plant a forest. And I have to say, our contractors and our contract managers have done an outstanding job in terms of our health and safety. I'm always amazed at the professionalism of our contractors when I go out and talk to them and engage with them. And I guess from a program perspective, we did try and do our bit to support them. So we're making sure that we're taking the learnings from incidents or pieces of work that are happening in one region and trying to share it across the program, so everybody's kind of learning from each other and not having to repeat the same mistakes. So a bit of a snapshot, I guess, for the year that's just been in terms of control operations. So we had our baseline funding of 10 million for the program, plus we got some additional IVL funding, a bit over 3 million came through the program, which we much appreciated the boost. And that's allowed us to deliver about 250,000 hectares, and counting. Some of the data's still coming in for the year. 250,000 hectares of control this year. A really outstanding achievement, especially because a lot of the funding came in quite late in the year, so it really put some pressure on both our contractors and our contract managers. So everybody did very well. So this is just some pretty pictures, I guess. So This is the Craigie Burn Management Unit. So this is in Canterbury on your way up to Arthur's Pass from Christchurch. This was a huge infestation. It was really the one big one that we decided to start off on in 2016. So, the before, which is only partly before, as you can see, we've kind of already started hooking into it here. So there was some harvesting done in that cutout on the top left there. What was worth harvesting got harvested. And then we actually worked with the farmer and bulldozed and root raked some of this because he wanted his farm back. This was actually grazed land, a lot of this, before the forest invaded. And as you can imagine, his stocking rates had dropped significantly. So that's the before. And I guess in the background, that's Craigie Burn Forest Park, and then not too far away is Arthur's Pass National Park, and on the other side is the Torless Tussocklands Park. So this was really invading into all sorts of kind of valuable biodiversity areas as well. And then a couple of years later, so it's actually gone a lot further than this now, but as you can see, a lot of control in the background there, sprayed off mature trees in the background, all the beech forest still remaining, grass starting to come back, obviously a lot better grazing there for the farmer. You can still see the windrows and the odd beech tree there. This was actually the site of a large fire fairly recently, the Bridge Hill fire, some of you may have heard of, so a lot of those standing dead trees burned, but as you can imagine, that probably some of these areas that we cleared, would have helped reduce the fuel load for that fire in places. So as much as you heard that the wilding control was bad, because some of the dead trees burned, it would have been much worse if it hadn't been controlled. So, and this is a bit of a look forward. So I guess we have a pretty good handle on what it's going to take for us to get to the finish line, to get to that better future. So this is a snapshot of the 42 management units that we currently have active across the country, which cover about 80% of the national infestation. And so for all our management units, we have a forward view of what it's going to cost under optimal funding to get to the finish line. So as you can see, we've actually got quite a lot of the management units down there in the bottom. We're getting quite close on quite a lot of management units. We're pretty close to the finish line. That better future is just right there, tantalisingly close. There's a few big ones still, but yeah. And obviously every year we're updating that forecast forward based on whatever funding we get in a given year. I'll actually just jump over that one given time. So looking forward, we're kind of at that stage. Our current strategy, as we've all kind of known for a little while, was getting a bit dated. It's been around 10 years since it was released, and it's timely to give it a bit of a refresh. We've delivered a lot of the outcomes and the actions that we'd set out back in the time. The program is now as well established. We kind of know the landscape of how we're operating things much better. There's a lot of new operational research insights. There's been a lot of thinking done, and a lot of evolution has happened along the way, so it's really timely to update that. And we've also kind of identified that there's an opportunity to better reflect tangata whenua perspective within the new strategy. So that's going to be a bit of a focus for us in this coming year. Alongside that, we've also got some plans to do some update of the infestation mapping. So infestation mapping, it's kind of always out of date. It's just about how out of date. But the last time we did a kind of a national overview was back in 2016, actually. And so we're just kicking off another project to update this. We've just started with Southland at the moment and are going to work our way through the country. We've been doing some work in the background, just doing some remote sensing using satellite imagery, but it hasn't quite got us to where we wanted to get, so we're just going to throw that in the mix, but also just draw on a whole lot of the local knowledge that already exists and other data sets out there. Yeah. Cool. And operationally for the coming year, we've actually been doing quite a lot of thinking with our governance group and with our operations group about how we allocate the funding that we've got, given the large number of places we could put it. So for the coming year, we're sticking with that focus on really aiming to do as much of the maintenance on the already controlled areas that we can. So basically, you do your initial control, and every 3 years you have to go back and do a maintenance control to remove the seedlings before they cone. So that's priority one. Having said that, we are trying to pick some areas and get it over the finish line. So pick some wins, I guess, and just, prove that it can be achieved. So we've got a few areas that we will be moving towards transition within that. As I said, continuing to update our forecast about what we need for the future going forward. And as always, we're always looking for opportunities for more funding and leveraging. And we're also going to be working with our partners just around how we keep our infestation data up to date going forward once we've done this update. So I guess where we're at is I kind of feel like we're really well placed. The program itself has got some really solid foundations. The collaboration's working really well. We can see the end there, that better future is really tantalisingly close. We can't control everything that's happening in the environment around us, but we can control a number of things. And so I think we're at that place of just making sure that we're well placed in terms of looking forward, making that we've got our strategic direction on a few different areas really well kind of agreed, that we continue doing what we're doing really well, and we keep moving forward. Those wins are really close. So thanks.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Sherman.
No worries.
Any questions, Sherman? Yep.
The images you showed right at the start of the before and after shots, are they available as a resource that can be used to illustrate that and discuss these issues with other people?
I'm going to let Lee answer that because she's sitting right here, my comms person. Back right hand corner. Cool. Great.
Sherman, back at the conference last year, there's a workshop right at the end briefly talked about the opportunities that a national pest management plan might provide for the program. Any further comments or thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's certainly still in the mix. So I guess it probably might get reflected in an updated, just kind of broader strategy, but we have been having some discussions or giving some advice to our minister just around the pros and cons of a national pest management plan. Yeah, it's certainly some opportunities in it. Yeah.
Yep.
We hear a lot about the current coalition government wanting to buy its way out of climate change with more pine planting, and Molesworth, of course, was in the news just in the last week. Any comments around this?
I mean, that's probably a slightly higher pay grade than me, but what I can say is, in terms of some of that regulatory alignment, I think we've come a long way to avoiding a lot of the future risks. So under the new National Environmental Standard for commercial forestry it is now, both plantation forestry and carbon forestry have to do a risk assessment before they can put any trees in the ground. So, and actually when they replant, which was actually quite a major win, so they have to do a risk assessment to make sure that the risk of spread is not unreasonable. So that will put some natural limits around, where certain species can reasonably go.
Done. Awesome. Thank you so much, Sherman.